Welcome to a football show from 440 Sports here on a Thursday. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. I am Braden Gall, and we are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and, of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. I'll tell you more about those two great local amazing companies coming up in just a little bit. Nick, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. The SEC sort of took center stage last weekend in college football, and the only big, super ranked game that's a playoff elimination game this week is also in the SEC, and that is Georgia and Tennessee. We'll get to that coming up a little bit later on. Building below the surface, getting better below the surface, getting cooking culture behind closed doors. I'm just making stuff up at this point.
Oh, I've got more metaphors if you want me to start. Row the boat, man. We're all rowing that boat together.
Okay. Trust the process, do your job, et cetera, et cetera. We got lots of them. But that's what the Titans are sort of, would you say, disseminating? Right now,
insinuating to directly saying, depending on who you're talking to. We could talk about if we agree or disagree with that concept.
And number one, we'll start with what does that mean? And then we'll discuss whether or not we agree or disagree with that concept, because we'll get to that coming up a little bit later on. But first and foremost, we'll break down the actual football game at Nissan Stadium. Titans back at home against the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll get to all of that. Sinkers Beverages, folks, 4-time liquor store of the year. Search Uber Eats and have the booze delivered directly to your house. They drive so you they drive so you can drink. I got to get that right. They also have good merch, by the way. So check out the Sinkers hat if you're watching on YouTube. Thumbs up, notifications on YouTube. Of course, share on Twitter and Facebook. If you're still on Twitter, please share it. There you go. Also, if you want to come on over, I'm skeeting away, Nick. Skeeting away over there at on the blue sky. On the blue sky.
Is that the verb?
Yeah, unfortunately.
That makes it less appealing to me.
Would you rather be tootin' or skeetin'? Which one?
Tootin'.
Tootin' is Mastodon, I think, which is a social media app that no one's ever heard of or uses. So
I don't know. If I just have to make up florps, we can make up sounds, but these are just made up words.
What TV sitcom is a florp from?
I think a florp is actually just an old viral tweet from like 10 years ago. The whole
Really?
likes are now florps. I think that was the phrase.
Okay.
To show our social media age.
Over on Blue Ski, man, the skies are clear, the humidity's down, as is there's not a lot of Nazi porn, so that's great too. come on over to Blue Sky and hang out with us if you so choose.
We are just 3 minutes into the show.
It feels like it does feel like Twitter circa 2012, 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. Basically, the advent of the college football playoff is when Twitter was fine, and then it got worse as the playoff has expanded.
Thanks, Florida State.
Way to go, Jim Grobe. There's about 3 people listening that get that joke. Okay. But we'll talk SEC football. All right. And then Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course. Again, order your entire Thanksgiving meal from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. That's sgwbbq.com. You can click on the link right there. Shout out to producer and host of the 440 Sports Network, JT Runke, who did not know how to use the internet. And he said, how do I order this Thanksgiving meal? And we'll find out if he listens to the show. And I said, here's the URL. The internet is a place where you build websites. Mm-hmm. And then there's links on the website that allow you to do things like listen, read, or purchase items.
Sure.
And it just sort of magically, you can do it from your computer, and then it just like happens to show up on somebody else's computer somewhere else on the internet. It's wild. It's wild. I thought he was.
This feels like some good pre-show banter. Maybe it's the Gen Z thing. Or are you like me, where you have to make purchases on a laptop? You can't do things on a phone.
So I was at not to go more off the rails, but thank you. I was at the Leon Bridges show with my wife on Tuesday at the Ryman, and number one, disappointing. I think he was sick. It was a bummer that the vocals were bad, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes he was playing through it, is what I saw. I saw a quarterback on a bum knee trying to like deliver passes all evening long, but like couldn't move out of the pocket. Like clearly his mobility had been stopped. But anyway, they do like in the pre-show or in between, they do all the shows coming up, right? They put them up on the wall and say, hey, here's what's coming up. Here's what's coming up. And I was like, holy shit, Brent Cobb is coming to the Ryman. I immediately ordered tickets on my phone. So long story short, I am a geriatric millennial capable of ordering things on my phone.
No, I was buying concert tickets last week, 2 weeks ago, and I had them on my phone and got frustrated and said, Becca, let me get my laptop. And I just went and got the laptop.
Now, to your point, if I have the option of laptop or phone, I can do everything so fast on my laptop because Steve Jobs from the grave has all of my information.
Yeah,
he's got it all.
It's so convenient.
He's got my credit cards, my passwords. He's got everything. This idea that we have privacy in this country is hilarious to me. It's an illusion of privacy. Steve Jobs has all of your information.
Yeah, send us your information in the comments here. We all have it already. Just let us know your bank info, your socials. We're just comment what you think we need, and we will charge you what you want.
Please give us your routing numbers and your socials. Thank you.
And subscribe to the Tennessean.
Yes, there you go. They're only going to take a few of your dollars. It's not a lot.
It's cheap. It's cheap, you guys. Subscribe to the Tennessean.
Just a couple bucks. All right, let me Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sacred's Beverages. By the way. There you go. All right, Minnesota Vikings. They're a 6-point favorite. Over under is 39.5, give or take. Let me rattle off some stats real fast. I think this was in your story, but also on the internet. I know, crazy place. Number 3 in points per game on defense. Number 2 in stop rate. Number 1 in takeaways. Number 1 in pass rush. Will Levis did play his cleanest game. Most efficient football game under the Brian Callahan era. One of his most efficient games of his career. Top 3, frankly. It was the best offensive game of the entire season based on some expected points metrics by Pro Football Reference. All of that, and listen, the Chargers are a very good defense. And so I want you to sort of what did you see last week in that game from the offense, from Levis, the efficiency metrics, all that stuff? And is there anything in it that gives you some positive vibes and thoughts on building on that performance against a defense that, as I just rattled off, looks far more dangerous at the thing that they couldn't do last week, which is protect the quarterback to the tune of 7 sacks?
Yeah, I wish I could hit you with a title card with a previously on a football show. But last week, I think the thing I said about what will a good Will Levis game look like is if he can do exactly what Mason Rudolph did plus 2 big plays. And that's what he did. So, kudos. That's the first step. We have reached the point where Will Levis did what the Titans needed him to do as a baseline. Prove you are better than the guy who is backing you up. Prove you can do what you need to do and figure out how to build on it. Now, he did it against a defense that suffocates in such a different way than the Vikings do, as you've alluded to. And this week, if he turns the ball over once or twice, that should not be held against him. That's what the Vikings do to people. They suffocate people with the pass rush. They turn people over. They're going to mess with your head. What we need to see from Will Levis this week when it comes to growth is response. Is if they bait you into that mistake, if there comes a point where you throw an interception because somebody was in a place that you didn't expect them to be, or you get hit from behind because the pass rush got to you, come back out and don't do that thing the Titans have done this year where the mistake happens and then it's the 3 and out and then it's the long return and then it's the 14-point deficit and it snowballs. I was talking to Daniel Brunskill yesterday, and we'll talk about this later when we're talking about the beneath the surface stuff. But one of the things he said when I asked him, so what gives you confidence that this team is headed in the right direction? He says, that first drive after halftime against the Chargers.
Yeah, very good drive.
You come out after the whole fiasco happens with the overturned fumble, where in those situations, the Titans in the past have tended to lose focus or maybe get a little bit too invested in what could have been, and you go 3 and out and the game snowballs. They went out and they got 3 points. Should they have gotten 7 or could they have gotten 7? Yeah, feasibly they could have punched it in. And you would like to see that be the next step of growth with this team. But that's the sort of thing we need to see more of something bad has happened, something has gone against the Titans' way, and they come back and they do what they need to do anyway. And we saw that a little bit against the Patriots. I will give them credit for doing that at home a couple of weeks ago. But to see them do that with Will Levis in the lineup, to see them do that at full strength against a really good team, because let's face it, the Patriots are not, to do that this week would be the next marker of growth, even if it comes in a losing effort. I think if the Titans can do that consistently, I consider that you're still taking that positive step.
To your point, we'll get to sort of the beneath the surface and behind the scenes and all that stuff. And what is it? How does that manifest itself if you're not winning, right? moral victories are not generally a thing in professional sports that we like to talk about. In general, you're getting paid millions of dollars to win and produce. But, look, the one thing that stays in my head is Dan Campbell's 4-19-1 start.
Yeah.
Like you and I talk a lot about sort of like the bigger sort of story arcs on coaching tenures. And I know you're big, this is not nerd corner stuff yet, but this is, you get really into that stuff, and I do too. And it's not to suggest that Brian Callahan is going to be, Kyle Shanahan or Dan Campbell.
No.
But it's those 2 points of emphasis. I think Shanahan was 0-9 to start his career.
Something like that.
It's not that Callahan can be them or will be them or that we think he will be them. It's that it is clearly possible that there's evidence recently of the 2 best franchises maybe in the NFC starting out a combined like 4-27-1 to start their coaching career. So
Sure.
what it means is that they were clearly building beneath the surface. So now I'm a little ahead of myself. But first of all, I think as the kids would say in the parlance of their times, in their feelings is what happens, I believe. When they face a little adversity in a game, they get in their feelings. And you got to avoid that stuff. I mean, this is what Nick Vannett was talking about a couple of weeks ago. Like we got to be confident. We need vocal leaders. We got to. And then Callahan, the very next week was like, I saw the sideline sort of hold its ground, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
Emotionally and mentally. So I think you're going to face adversity against this Vikings team. That's the bottom line to your point. What does it look like? Maybe it's not turnovers. Maybe it is. Maybe it's sacks. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's 3rd and longs. Maybe it's a couple of bad drives. The defense is going to do that to you. Brian Flores is doing great work. But how do you respond to it? And I agree. I thought the drive coming out of halftime where they leaned on the running game and they stayed with their clearly well-organized plan. The one thing that this coaching staff and this offense have done well all season is have a good plan coming into the game. They've done that well. And so to have a good plan, despite facing some adversity and coming out of the second half and playing well, I think I think you're right. What does that look like? What do you do next, right? The great Don Meyer, coach of Lipscomb here, rest in peace. I got a chance to meet him like 20 years ago. I worked with his son at Rivals, and he carried around a big binder, and he had all kinds of stuff in there. And I think he's one of the winningest coaches all time in terms of total wins in college basketball history. And he would always say, doesn't matter what you did on the last possession. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what are you going to do next? 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 And the Titans need some of that mentally on the sidelines, and we're starting to see some of it. And so we'll get to some of it. Go ahead.
I also want to say we're focusing on the offense about this. I want to say this about the defense as well.
Yeah.
Like I think that the defense's response needs to improve, especially in the secondary, because we were here a month ago coming out of the bye week, and I was sitting here saying, hey, have you noticed that the Titans haven't given up a single touchdown to a wide receiver yet? That is no longer a thing that we can say. That is not a thing anymore.
Are you referring to Quentin Johnston as a receiver now?
I am, and I was never on the let's tar and feather the guy for having a bad rookie year camp. Like people can get better. He's a talented football player, but like, look, this secondary, especially without L'Jarius Sneed, especially without Quandre Diggs, these are some young developmental prospect players, and you're sitting here about to face Justin Jefferson.
And it doesn't appear that L'Jarius Sneed is anywhere closer to the field, right?
He's closer than close, man. That's the phrase that he used. We'll see. He
closer than close.
He has not practiced in a couple of weeks, and I would be very, very, if he doesn't practice today, I would be very, very surprised if he's out there this week.
But that being said, he's not exactly a player who practiced a lot anyway when he's healthy.
No, for sure. But if he is not at least limited, shall we say, I want to see this defense get a red zone stop. I want to see this defense deal with a short field, because it's kind of the inverse of what the Titans' defensive struggles were for years, these last 2 or 3 years of we'll give up all these yards, but when the field gets condensed, they're not scoring. And so the Titans are either giving up no yards or allowing touchdowns. And it's hard to rationalize which one is best, which one is better. But I want to see this defense dig in its heels and get again, we're not talking moral victories, but you force a field goal in the red zone, that's a moral victory stop. The defense says, oh, we did our job. We didn't give up the 7. To not be able to do that in these last 4 or 5 games, I want to see that. I want to see that response just as much as I want to see the offensive response of something went wrong, let's fix it. Like, this team is, I don't want to say this team is close. We've been saying that for 9-10 weeks now. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. What I am trying to communicate.
Sounds like that's what you're communicating.
What I'm trying to communicate is that this team is getting all the way to the river and not drinking yet. Like,
sounds like you're analyzing and thinking beneath the surface is what it sounds like.
I might be, if you're trying to segue into an ad break, but there's a lot to think about with this team of why things aren't working. And the answer isn't, to quote Brian Callahan yesterday, the answer is not, well, everything's terrible.
Yeah, that's true. Look, again, I know I don't want to say like loser mentality to be like, no, 4-19-1, guys, 4-19-1. But it's like the thing that I keep going back to, that because I'm fairly, and I'll acknowledge this, like I personally am fairly conservative when it comes to evaluating coaches, college and pro. Time and investment is almost always going to yield a truer result. And sometimes that result's not what you want, and you got to move on and make a change. But sometimes, like, again, I'm looking at the Bears firing their offensive coordinator after like 3 bad games with a rookie quarterback. And I'm just going like, the guy was playing really good football. You've seen it. He's a rookie. Like, he just needs some time. And, and so I'm not suggesting that wasn't the right move or whatever. I don't cover the Bears. I've got Caleb on my keeper fantasy team, so I'd like him to do well. But like, we are so fans, and this is not a knock on fans because it's their right to be reactionary and upset because they invest time and money into their favorite sports teams. But I am conservative when it comes to firing coaches. Make sure it's the thing before you do the thing. And the reason I say all that is that I feel like it's ridiculous to talk about Brian Callahan not halfway through his first ever head coaching stint and feel like you have some like clear verdict on what he is or is not going to be in the future. Mm-hmm. When I look at 2 of the best franchises in the league starting very similarly. And so it doesn't mean that's what he's going to be or how good he could be, but I just feel like we need a lot more time to figure these things out. And when you afford that time, you get a clearer picture. And so allowing the little things to build underneath the surface and behind the scenes is kind of the only way to do it. I think it's way more long tail in college. Honestly, I think you need more of that, especially at programs that have lesser resources or difficult recruiting bases, or, there's different dynamics in college where it's about your athletic department and your NIL dollars and like your geography, none of which matters at all in the NFL. So it's easier to find out what you are in the NFL much faster. Right. So we'll see.
We'll see. I think that, are we getting into this?
I was going to ask about the defense.
Okay, let's do that
for the Titans first, because the Vikings offense has started to sort of, people are like, the tape is out on Darnold in the Kevin O'Connell offense, I think, and they're going to have to adjust and evolve. And they came out so well in the beginning parts of the season. Things are kind of starting to catch up a little bit to them. They're still a really good football team, but they still have an elite player in Jefferson who gets force fed the football. The Titans don't really necessarily have a lockdown option for him. And so where is the advantage that you could find the Titans sort of leaning on? Where's the press point for the Titans defense in your mind?
Advantage might be loose, but I do think that the Titans can put some pressure on Darnold. I think that the Vikings offensive line, especially with the injuries that they have, there is going to be an ability for the Titans to, at the very least, have a good opportunity to get some pressure, which is something they haven't done in a couple of weeks now. And I'm going to need to see it before I say it's going to happen. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, Arden Key and Harold Landry are going to have a field day, but I think this Vikings offensive line is bottom 10 in sack rate, bottom 10 in pressure rate right now. If I'm remembering correctly, this is not a super polished front. And the way Denard Wilson's defense has played this year, I wouldn't be surprised if they can put the clamps on them 2 out of every 3 drives, that sort of thing. It's the drives that do get sustained that have been the problem. I think that they'll make the negative plays. Will they force a turnover or 2? That's the huge what if. But when it comes to actually getting the Vikings behind the sticks and making Sam Darnold beat them, I think they can do that. And so, I mean, I looked this up the other day. Justin Jefferson is top 12 in the NFL in deep targets, intermediate targets, and behind the line of scrimmage targets. It doesn't matter what part of the field, they're going to get him the ball. They're going to get him involved. So they're going to have to be on high alert for this supernova of a talent. It's going to be wherever it happens. But if they can mitigate that harm rather than just try and eliminate it, the rest of the field, the Titans have some advantages.
It's hard to be like top 10 in deep targets and top 10 in behind the line targets.
Yeah, I think he's like 8th in deep targets, 12th in behind the line of scrimmage, and 5th in intermediate.
I'm glad you said the intermediate because I was going to say, and what he's most dangerous at is the 12 to 18 yard range. Like that's where he's like really dangerous, especially over the middle. The Titans. It's fascinating to watch a roster get quote unquote worse. You trade Ernest Jones and DeAndre Hopkins. You have some injuries and try to understand the team getting better too. Like it's just very that part's very complicated. So all right, this is the transition. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, making your Thanksgiving perfect and easy over the holiday season. You can order right now. Go to shotgunwilliesbarbecue.com. That's SGWBBQ.com. And go to the website, click on the link, order Thanksgiving. They got the Black Hawk Farms Wagyu brisket. They got turkey breast. They got Tony's Magic Green Beans. They got turnip greens. They got mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, jalapeno cornbread, and pumpkin pie, all of which you can order and pick it up by Wednesday afternoon. I think they close at like 2 on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So all you got to do is order it at any point. You pay for it. You go pick it up. It's got all the instructions. It's already been smoked and cooked for you. You reheat it according to the instructions on Thursday morning, and you've got your Thanksgiving meal. I've got my parents and some in-laws coming in. We got like 8 or 10 people. We got the whole thing just going to be set up buffet style in the kitchen, ready to go. And then all you do is swing by Sinkers Beverages on the way back home. When you pick up your meats, you go to Sinkers Beverages, and they are working together with Shotgun Willie's Barbecue to pair up the appropriate and proper bottles of wine, because most of us, I don't know about you, Nick, I have no ability to tell you what goes with what when it comes to wine. I don't know anything, but every now and then on a nice meal, I appreciate like one glass of wine. I don't love wine, but the one nice glass of wine that is designed to go with a really good, well-cooked meal, I'm down for that. And Sinkers Beverages has you covered. Of course, you got like 5 or 6 different pairings in there. They've got a barrel right over there in the wine section. So just walk over, turn left when you go in. It's right over there on the left side. They've got all the different selections there. Those guys do a great job. So go check it out. Also, Sinkers won an award for craft beer retailer best in the city. They've got a huge walk-in beer fridge with all the best beer from around the town. So lots of great stuff. You got East Nashville Beer Works in there. You got Jackalope. You got Bearded Iris. You got Tennessee Brew Works. You got Little Harpeth. You got anything you could, Yazoo, of course, everywhere. All kinds of great, good Middle Tennessee beer that's in that award-winning beer fridge there at Sinkers Beverages. So go check them both out. What does building beneath the surface mean?
I would say that when I tried to get some answers from some players, the people who I gravitated to talking to were people who had been in organizations that very much built above the surface. So
okay, yeah, tell me what that means.
So I talked to Daniel Brunskill, who has seen San Francisco do what it's done. I talked to Mason Rudolph, who has seen Pittsburgh thrive on continuity. And I talked to everybody's all-time favorite Titan, Mike Edwards, about what works in Kansas City and Tampa Bay.
Is he currently a
Super Bowls. He is no longer a Titan.
Currently a Titan.
He was released about an hour after he spoke to me.
I stepped all over you there. His resume, of course, is you said 2 Super Bowls, right?
He won one in Tampa and one in Kansas City.
That's right. Okay.
And so what I was curious about is, what do those locker rooms have beneath the surface that the Titans don't? If you are trying to build beneath the surface, what does it look like when something is built beneath the surface?
Well, okay. It is, let me just hypothetically, for the fun part of this conversation, is building above the surface like spending like 112 million on Jimmy Garoppolo and then like trading him? Like, what is above the like
sure.
trading up for Trey Lance and it doesn't work? Like,
I would say that building above the surface versus building below the surface is
like drafting Patrick Mahomes.
When you have an infrastructure that works and then you improve upon it versus when you are fragmenting an infrastructure, when you are building a culture versus improving upon a built culture.
Would the Philadelphia Eagles going all in a few years ago, I can't remember what year it was, when they like re-signed Michael Vick and they signed a ton of free agents and they were quote going for it. It was a dream team. They won the offseason, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. That's what we're talking about, right?
That's part of it. And then I would also just say part of it's like the Steelers going out and trading for Mike Williams. The Steelers culture is the Steelers culture. Mike Tomlin is in year 18 in Pittsburgh. The beneath the surface is what it is. No matter what they do, that is the culture. And then adding Russell Wilson, adding Mike Williams. You take a team that is done and you bring a new piece into it.
So
it's baking versus cooking, I guess.
So building above the surface is not inherently a bad thing or a bad strategy. It is the way to take a good team and make it great and compete for a championship, as long as beneath the surface has already been established and is good. Yeah.
And so here's the explanation that I'll give that Daniel Brunskill told me. It's in my story. You can go read this on the Tennessean if you subscribe. It's a fascinating exercise where I asked him, so what made San Francisco work? Like why was it so functional there? And he gave me this example of a set of plays they ran called Wanda plays, which was weak side single back rushes. And it's a hallmark of a Kyle Shanahan scheme. You have one running back, you have a weak side, you are running to it. And there was one year that it just wasn't working. No matter what they did, their Wanda plays were not working. And when you have a team that is built beneath the surface, what you do is you don't scrap what's not working. You figure out how to solve the problem of what's not working. So they talk about the difference between knowing what to do and understanding why you do it. If you know what to do and you're the right tackle on a weak side play that's coming your direction, you go where you go. Oh, I'm supposed to reach block, or I'm supposed to down block, or whatever it is.
A little pinch and pull on the weak side.
If you understand why you're doing what you're doing, you can suss out, okay, so if I go this direction, the running back is coming off of this angle, and the person who's pulling behind me is doing this, and the receiver is doing this. And so the seam of the play that we are trying to create is right here. So the 49ers went into the lab, and they deduced our weak side plays are going too wide. We're used to having a tight end on the strong side, so we hit the edge at a certain angle. Our angle is too wide. We need to flatten this angle and create an extra cutback lane on the strong side to give the running back an opportunity to make that cut sooner so it can hit the hole quicker. And everybody in the offense, because Shanahan had been there 4 years and because the players had been playing in the scheme, intuitively knew, okay, so if I take one step narrower, this play's going to work. And that's the sort of thing that you can afford yourself when things are understood. Now you contrast that with the Titans, where we'll use Peter Skoronski as an example, because this is what Brunskill and I were talking about. From 2019 to 2022, it's pretty safe to say the Titans had an established under-the-surface identity. Whether it was Arthur Smith or Todd Downing or whoever it was, the Derrick Henry peak years,
Mike Vrabel,
people knew what the Titans were going to do.
Yeah.
2023, Tim Kelly comes in, and the Titans start running a slightly different offense. It's not completely radically changed, but the people who were there in 2022 had to learn something new for 2023. And you have rookies come in like Will Levis or Tajay Spears or Peter Skoronski who have to learn something brand new. And the phrasing was different. The code words were different. So people weren't calling plays so much as they were calling code words that signified plays. So the processing was a little bit different. And you learn this and you learn this. And then you spend an entire offseason this year with Callahan and his crew coming in, unlearning that. And so the baseline is now unlearn what you knew and learn this new thing. And so everybody who is returning is functioning as a rookie or is functioning mentally as a new player. And everybody's learning at their own speed, and they're unlearning plays that sounded like last year's plays, but now sound like this year's plays. Do I do this? Do I do that? And the processing is slowing down and then speeding up. And so when you have that happening, we're at week 11 or whatever it is this year, and you're starting to see the growth of people are starting to make that transition from knowledge to understanding. And as you build on that, as you get into year 2, as you get into year 3, as you get into year 4, if you're the Steelers, year 18 of terminology being terminology, of schemes being schemes, that's when you get all 11 players learning the one thing and knowing how to execute it. Not just I'm the left tackle, I go left, but I do this so that this person can do that, so that this can work that way. It's like the best writing advice you'll ever hear is from the South Park guys, Trey Parker, Matt Stone.
I think I know where you're going on this.
The writing advice they give is, if you're writing a story, you should never be able to say and then, and then, and then. You should say so then, but then, therefore then. There should always be causation and to
why
this happened. Why did the next thing happen? Yep. It's not just and then, and then, and then. The Titans are moving from and then to so then.
It took 34 minutes, but we got to a sitcom reference.
Yeah, but it's more just if you guys are writing workshopping, listen to that. But
no, I've actually seen that presentation you're talking about.
Yeah.
So the two words I wrote down when you were going through this whole thing, thinking about the Niners situation specifically to some degree, and your sort of example of their weak side running not working, stability and scheme. You still need a good scheme, and you still need time. I think, I don't know for sure how I feel about this, but I think that Brian Callahan's scheme has been one of the things that's been maybe most consistent since camp. Good practices were highlighted by good scheme. When the Titans do well coming out of the opening kickoff, it's clear that the scheme has got some smart elements to it, that he knows how to call a game and design an offense. I don't know if he's among the best in the league. I'm not ready to go there yet, but it does feel like the scheme does have some, like, I'm not ready to say it's sound, but it's one of the few things that's kind of been there, to your point, underneath the surface the entire time through all their struggles, no matter who's playing quarterback. But the stability thing and the predictability and the consistency, that only comes with time. And that takes a while. And honestly, 11 weeks doesn't sound like enough to fully grasp it all.
It's funny because I talked to Mason Rudolph about Pittsburgh, and he started off talking like a quarterback. He's a quarterback, but eventually, after 4 or 5 questions about continuity, he just eventually goes, look, you know what Pittsburgh had that nobody else has? Ben Roethlisberger and Marquise Pouncey and Cam Hayward and Vince Williams playing together for 12 years.
Good players.
That's the outlier. If you have guys who only ever played for one coach playing together their entire careers, that is unbelievable. That's unfathomable. And so what you have there, and Rudolph pointed this out, I think this is actually a really interesting point. The Steelers' defense worked because, let's use Cam Hayward and Vince Williams as the example. You can say TJ Watt now, whoever you want. Guys who spent their entire career there, who know the system, who know how to teach the guys who don't know the system yet the shortcuts to getting to that understanding. And Rudolph says he's seen Jeffrey Simmons and Amani Hooker be those guys on the Titans defense. The Titans offense doesn't have that earned respect position yet. Because I was trying to think about this yesterday. Maybe you can figure this out off the top of your head, or maybe I'll have to go into Geek Corner. What 2 offensive players on this team would you guess have started the most games together?
For the Titans?
For the Titans, yeah.
So together might, I mean, I don't want to say 11 games with Latham and Skoronski.
I'm trying to think, is it going to be like Chig and Radens?
Chig and Skoronski maybe.
Chig and Skoronski maybe?
He had the appendectomy last year. I mean, Spears doesn't start technically. Hasn't ever really. I mean, Levis and Chig might actually be. Levis, Chig, Skoronski might be the trio that has probably started. I would say what was it, 9 games last year for Levis, and then he's got like 5 or 6 this year. That might actually be the combination. Yeah, Chef Rand says Chig and someone. Yeah,
it's probably Chig and Skaronski, which is wild when one of those guys is in his second year and the other guy's in his third year. Like, if you're talking about, oh, why did it work so well for the Steelers? How long did Ben Roethlisberger play with Le'Veon Bell, play with Heath Miller, play with Antonio Brown, play with Marquise Pouncey? Like, these guys knew each other inside and out, and they had that authority. They had that cachet to say, this is what we do. That can only come. And like, again, I am not trying to paint anybody in a bad light. I'm not misquoting Mason Rudolph, but he was talking and he says, look, that's the sort of thing that in a few years, and then he pauses and he says, I think we can be good now. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But think about what we'll have with a few years.
Yeah. Chig and NWI says Chef Rand. I don't think NWI started enough games. But if you want to talk about stability and continuity and dependability and understanding the entire moving parts of every offensive play, NWI probably would be my bet. Like who could diagnose and draw up every single play in the playbook for all 11 players? I might go with NWI as a guy that could probably do it. But here's the follow-up to all of this, because there's a very analytical side to understanding movement in a play and understanding why this player does this so that I do that, right? Like there's a lot of that. And that's talent, and that's understanding, and that's data, and that's analytics. That's not necessarily the other side of this, which is culture and psychology. And one of the things that I was fascinated by with Mike Vrabel for years, I would go out on camp the first couple of weeks of camp, and I would go talk to free agents, and I would let them have a week or two playing for the Titans, and I would go to them and I would say, and I did this with Austin Hooper, and I did this with all these guys, and I would go up to them and I'd just say, how would you describe the differences in terms of communication, teaching, and just interpersonal skills of Mike Vrabel? Like, what is it that makes him unique? And everybody talked about all those things that we already now know about Vrabel, which is, great teacher, mentor of people in that sort of hands-on coaching role. Sure, he's got a stern personality that maybe ruffled feathers in the front office, or losing doesn't help that either. But like, that's the element that the intangible sort of cultural thing, which sometimes I agree can be overblown when it comes to professional athletes. I think it matters a lot more when you get to younger athletes in college ranks, where the human element is more of a factor, right? Like the whole point of the NFL is to remove the human element. Like the NFL doesn't care about what's going on in your personal life, doesn't care what's going on with your girlfriend, doesn't care if you got grades or not. Like, it doesn't give a shit. It's a meritocracy. Produce or else you lose your job. That's it. And so that part of it's interesting. I think it is overblown in professional sports, but at the same time, that is a thing that you are trying to build to accompany the deep, rich understanding of why all the different moving parts happen. And so it doesn't sound like, and maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but you haven't really gotten to any of that part of this. How much of a factor is that in terms of what Callahan and Wilson and these guys have to build from a culture? All that stuff is, but I am fascinated by the psychology of leadership and the psychology of a locker room. I think it's interesting, and I think it can play a role.
The big question for me, and I hate to answer a question with a question, but like, is that a thing that can be built with anything other than time? Like,
I don't think so.
I think that if you're talking about the literal answer of like how good somebody is at teaching, like that is a skill that can be learned. I'm not going to diminish, oh, well, Vrabel was a good teacher because he was here for a while. No, clearly he was a good teacher because he's a good teacher. And I don't know the answer to how good these guys are relative to that. But what I do know is that the longer that people are in your system, the easier it is to communicate with them. And that's what Vrabel had with his veterans, was that shorthand. So I don't want to hold it against a first-time head coach, a first-time offensive coordinator, and a first-time defensive coordinator that they don't have that yet. But also, let's not pretend that Vrabel didn't have this team 9-7 in his first year. Like, it's not impossible to succeed early.
Yeah. Well, 9-7 first year, AFC Championship game 2 years after that, and then a 1 seed the following year. I think leadership and charisma is certainly something that you kind of just have naturally. You can get better at it over time. We just went through a political season where, Riz is a big deal to the kids. And it's certainly a big deal in a locker room where you're going to, quote unquote, battle every Sunday. Yeah. Because it's a very physical sport. but also like thinking of Vrabel and Callahan, like their leadership styles and their charisma are very different. But that was part of the reason Callahan was appealing to this front office, was that he had a totally different style. And there is no one way to cover your ears, cat. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And so you can be a leader in a very different way than Mike Vrabel and still be very effective. Learning your, and I would argue, so my wife is big on this stuff, that she's a psychology major who works for a major Fortune 50 company and has a big team. And the great leaders know how to adapt to their team. The great leaders know how to get across to the different folks in a different way every time if they need to. Yeah. And then know when to motivate with the carrot, motivate with the stick, right? I mean, that's the great ones know how to do that. And so
and I will add, this is input from everybody I talked to, including, again, everybody's favorite Titan, Mike Edwards, who noticed this within 6 days of joining the team. You know what this locker room everybody agreed has that good teams have? These guys like each other. Like, these people enjoy being around each other. And for whatever that is worth, the vibes aren't bad. Like,
there we are. They're feeling it's in their feelings.
These people, these players, these teammates love each other is the word that people kept saying. We love each other. We love each other. And like, take that for what it's worth. Being friendly with people. Like, my best friend and I would not be good at playing football because we are best friends. Like that does not solve problems.
No. But there's a reason people are like, you don't go into business with your family, or you don't go into business with your best friends. Like it's hard to do sometimes.
But it helps when nobody's at each other's throat. Nobody's blaming anybody. People seem to be having fun. If you're in that locker room, I will tell you, there is a lot of fun happening. They like it.
The locker room, like lowercase, is just a fascinating place of human psychology. It just is. Basketball, football, baseball, soccer, college, pro, doesn't matter. It's a fascinating place of human dynamics, leadership, physics. I mean, it's fascinating. I'm always interested by, like, it's impossible to put 53 people in a room and get them to agree. It's impossible. Like, I don't agree with my mother on most things. And I love her. She's great. It's fascinating to watch. So ultimately what matters is, over the course of the last 6-7 games, like, what does all of that beneath the surface start to reveal on the surface? And that is what you need to see. I think you're right to point to responding to adversity this weekend. If they get into some spots where a bad play happens, a turnover, a sack, something big, momentum swing happens, you got to respond to that. And I think watching them learn how to do that better is a sign of culture and belief, but also hopefully offensively a sign of understanding the why is where we're at here. So there we go. All right. We will not charge you $180 for the session today.
No, you want to end on like a geeky note with this, because I have a big, let's put it on this. I think that one of the enduring lessons of the analytics revolution, or the Moneyball revolution, or whatever you want to call it, is that we have figured out how to separate if something is working from if something was a good idea. Of like, is it like the fourth down conversation of like, well, you did a good thing by punting and then stopping the other team, but that doesn't necessarily mean punting was the right thing to do. Or you failed going for it on fourth down, but that doesn't mean that you did the wrong thing because you failed. And so it's the difference between understanding input and understanding output of, is the thing that we did the right thing versus did we succeed at that right thing?
Yeah.
And so everything we're talking about right now is irrespective of the Titans actually winning football games. The Titans can be doing all of this stuff that we're talking about, of building the right framework beneath the surface, and finish the year 2-15. And I'm not saying that that's good. I'm not saying that that's bad. But if we're sitting here in January and the Titans finished 4-13, or the Titans finished 3-14, or whatever it is, and we can still say, yeah, but I feel like they're building what they're supposed to be building, I don't know if you can call this year a failure. Z is pointing it out. Process over results is the correct way to say it. But like,
strategy over execution, right?
Yeah. Like, we have to acknowledge that in a league like the NFL, where 52 to 54% of the games, depending on what year you're in, are decided by 8 points or fewer. When that is happening, when one play can flip the results of more than half of games, there are going to be a lot of games that you could have won that you lost, that you could have lost that you won. Decisive outcomes are few and far between. And so when there is very little decisiveness, you have to look at the input. And if we are agreeing, which I don't know everybody can agree at this point, but if we are agreeing that the Titans are building the correct input, if this beneath the surface stuff is actually what it takes to win in the modern NFL, then we have to try to not fixate on results for the rest of the year. Thank you. My sign's all the way over there, and my arms aren't Mr. Elastic. This is Geek Corner.
Geek Corner by
Corner.
Nick Suss, where we suss it out. Okay, so ultimately, and the one thing about Shanahan and about Dan Campbell, to kind of wrap this up with those two examples of an 0-9 start for Shanahan and a 4-19-1 start for Campbell, is the cruise ship definitely has to turn around at some point. Like it does eventually lead to results, and that absolutely has to happen. So we can be patient, we can preach patience, we can preach slow build, trust the process, et cetera, all the things we just did, but eventually it does have to lead to something in the form of victory. And it just is okay that it takes a little bit of time. It just can't take a lot of time. That's all. PPG says, I really hope the Titans have patience with this coaching staff and front office. I'd love to see things evolve, except for special teams. Nice.
You don't want to see special teams evolve?
No, I think we do. I think we know that.
I'm joking. I understand syntax.
Oh, okay. Sinkers Beverages, of course. Make sure you swing by and sign up for the in-crowd. The allocations are now. This is the time to sign up for the in-crowd, but because they are accepting requests for their allocations of the year now. They're not like other liquor stores, where other liquor stores will just like put everything they have on the shelf and say stand in line for hours. No, they take the best requests from their top shoppers in the in-crowd, which is sort of their customer appreciation group, right? And they will take requests. You can fill out what you want, and they will reward you for being a loyal customer with your top picks. And that can be, you can shoot for the moon on that. You want a Pappy? Go for it. Go for it. They may not be able to help you out on that, but they'll do their best. And they'll also put out their monthly allocations, where kind of every couple Fridays they'll say, hey, we got a big drop coming. The bourbon cart's out. Come on by. You can pick up one of what we got, which is like Blanton's Gold or anything that's allocated inside are sort of tough to find. So make sure you check it out. Eagle Rare, which I can't believe is allocated, but whatever. You got Colonel Taylor, you got all that good stuff. So swing by Sinkers Beverages. And Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. So they are open today. Go get you some barbecue today. There you have it. All right, SEC, quickly. Alabama absolutely dominated LSU. Ole Miss kind of dominated Georgia. South Carolina dominated Vanderbilt. So what was supposed to be a pretty awesome slate of games turned into relatively boring outcomes last weekend, but it was very, very important. I think the committee, Nick, is largely underrating most SEC teams. I think I could argue that Texas and Tennessee and Alabama, and Ole Miss and Georgia are all a little undervalued by the committee. I'm okay with that because it'll work itself out. We don't know if Nico's going to play or not for Tennessee at time of taping right now. That being said, I've been told that he's going to start. I've also heard some rumblings that he may be not ready. I think Vegas is telling you he's probably not going to play, right? 10.5 point spread right now for Tennessee and Georgia. These two teams are built very similarly. They like to play the game very similarly, despite their scheme being very different. What do you make of what happened last week? And then looking ahead to Tennessee, Georgia. And I got a couple other questions, but I want to just start with broadly the shakeup in the standings last week with two teams near and dear to your heart, Ole Miss and Georgia.
That game, I felt things that I didn't expect to feel. I am proud for that franchise, for that athletic department. I am happy that Ole Miss got over the hump. Good for them.
They could just beat Kentucky.
What this exposed about Georgia, and this is not a unique opinion, nobody's going to accuse me of coming up with something unique here, but like, if Georgia can get beat that way, of take the things that Georgia takes pride in and just be better at it than they are, there is definitely something to be said about, oh no, the dynasty era in college football might be ending. If this much parity can come of a playoff situation, I don't know what to make of it. But I do think that there are very few things more dangerous than going to Athens to face a pissed off Georgia team, especially in this Kirby Smart era.
With
Like,
with a banged up quarterback.
I have spent the entire year expecting Kirby to be able to put Nico in a blender, and now Nico's a little bit banged up, and Georgia is pissed. I'm not saying that means Georgia's going to win, because if Georgia's offensive line can't figure out what to do, oh no, Tennessee's going to put Carson Beck in a blender. But I don't know.
I think it's 10-10 leaving the third quarter. I think both quarterbacks are in a blender.
Very
It might be in the same one.
I would not be shocked if this ends up being a slightly less than stellar Sanford Stadium environment compared to the last time these two teams played in Athens.
That would be beneficial to Tennessee.
Yeah. I think that 2 years ago, I've heard that might be the most electric Sanford Stadium has ever been playing that Tennessee game. I do not know if that will be the case this week with Georgia coming off of a loss. But that being said, Kirby knows how to rile up a crowd. So
Georgia wins.
Georgia wins, yeah.
That's my prediction. Look, here's the thing. Ole Miss, first of all, Georgia got some stops in the red zone on defense, and if that had not happened, it could have been like really, really ugly. Their touchdown, Georgia, against Ole Miss was a short field in the first 5 minutes, so it was 28-3 the rest of the game. Probably could have been, like as I said, 42-3 the rest of the game. Tennessee's defensive front, very similar to that of Ole Miss's, and Carson Beck has not responded well to those situations. I don't think it's Carson Beck. I think it's some Carson Beck, some offensive line, some 2024 roster management problems, some naturally a natural market force around championship caliber programs when you have 4 or 5 straight NFL draft classes of like a dozen players every year. I just think it happened. You get to the top of the mountain, there's another side of the mountain for every team. Like that's how mountains work. So
we got so spoiled by the Saban era thinking that every dynasty looked like a Saban era dynasty. They don't. Well, that was even a one-of-one dynasty.
But even Saban never won 3. Even Saban had multiple trips up the mountain. You know what I mean? Like, and then you come back down. You come back down the other side. Even when you have a 17-year dynasty, you don't win all of them. So I think it's natural. I think it happens. I think losing McConkey and Bowers and like it's hurt them. The offensive line's been banged up. The defense has put NFL play. I just think it's a combination of everything. It doesn't mean that they're not pissed off and good enough to beat Tennessee. They are. But we're going to find out. Here's the other thing. We also cannot make broad sweeping judgments about the sport, about coaches, about players when the data is incomplete.
Right.
By the end of the year, we can talk. Like Ole Miss has lost. Better Ole Miss teams have lost to Mississippi State.
Yes.
I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
I don't know if there has been a better Ole Miss team.
Maybe you're right.
Maybe.
But the point is that things could still happen for all of these teams.
Sure.
Tennessee could lose to Vanderbilt. You know what I mean? Like it's not crazy that these things could happen. So we just don't know what the full data set looks like until we're done with 12 games. So we cannot make some big sweeping like dynasty is over. This is an indicator of Georgia slipping or Ole Miss's proof of concept is now perfect. Well, they did lose to Kentucky earlier in the season by not getting stops when it mattered. So I think we're South Carolina is really good. They're growing, but and it's a fun game to play what if with South Carolina because they had Alabama in the final minutes of that game
and LSU
and at home, but they dominated Kentucky on the road. They dominated Vanderbilt on the road. They dominated Oklahoma on the road. Like they have been a very good football team for a big chunk of the season. So they're getting there as well. A little too late for a playoff conversation with South Carolina, but man, what a run. Missouri a 12-point underdog this weekend. I know Eli is talking about them being a playoff team, but they are not. Their resume does not tell us that, and so I think South Carolina wins this weekend. But we shall see. There's a couple teams playing SoCon, like their FBS weekend here, A&M and Alabama and Auburn. But Texas, Arkansas is interesting. Keep an eye on that one. Texas has to hold serve. But this is all about Tennessee and Georgia, and I think Tennessee can win if Nico plays well and he's healthy. I'm not sure they can win with Gaston Moore. So.
Let me ask you this on November 14th. Are we going to be 16 for 16 this year of coaches being retained?
I think it's very. I was asked that actually recently. I think that's very possible. I think here's the wild card. Mark Stoops chooses to not return.
Yeah.
I said that in the summer. I thought he would retire. I think there's another option, which is that Kirk Ferentz is sort of quietly pushed out at Iowa and said, "Hey, Kirk, we appreciate you. Here's your gold watch. Please retire." And Mark Stoops decides that he would like to go coach his alma mater for a few years for his final chapter. But I also think he's hitting his head on the ceiling at Kentucky, and he has no good relationship with the athletic director. He's not going to get fired because the buyout's fairly large, and he's got some years on the contract. But he tried to leave last year. Is Pittman getting fired? Probably not, especially if he wins this weekend. Is Clark Lee getting fired? Absolutely not. Best season maybe in Vanderbilt history.
How much money does the lumberman have?
Oh, you're right. Never count out Auburn doing something weird. That is true. That's a good point. South Carolina, Shane Beamer, hot seat adjacent at the beginning of the year. One of the best coaching jobs in the conference. So I agree. We could go 16 for 16, which is very rare in this conference. So I don't know. I think I'm at 10-10. Tennessee, Georgia going into the fourth quarter. That's where I'm at. I think it's very low scoring. Both defenses play well. Both offenses are conservative in the first half, which is sort of their MO. They kind of poke and prod and test the waters a little bit because they know their defense can keep them in games. I think it's a little Spider-Man meme-ish in the first half, and then somebody's got to make something happen in the third and fourth quarter. So
yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see.
I'm picking Georgia. I'm picking Georgia. So here's the other thing. My kids are at a sleepover on Saturday night. So wife and I are just like free to watch a football game. It's going to be great. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. Go to dinner, and then we'll go to Shotgun Willie's barbecue on Saturday, bring home some meats, and settle in for a nice Tennessee-Georgia football game. We'll see.
This might be the first time in a long, long time that I will prioritize the last 5 minutes of the late college football game over the beginning of SNL. Not super excited for this week's episode. So I'll watch the end of the Georgia-Tennessee game if it's exciting.
But is SNL delivered this year?
6 episodes so far, 2.5 have delivered.
And okay, that's not a hit rate that normal people continue watching. I know you're not normal, but
we don't have enough time for me to give my rant on this. But look, fandom means you love things despite the fact that you hate them. It does not mean you only love everything. Oh, I'm a stan. I love every song they make. No, if you love something, you should be critical of the thing you love.
That's fair, but art is not a sport. Like
it is. Do you want to see my fantasy SNL league? I can pull it up on the screen right now.
No, I don't. Shout out to The Diplomat on Netflix. That show has been very, very fun, very good. Kerry Russell crushing it. Lots of good character actors around her. Lots of people you'd recognize but don't know their names. Wife and I are all in on it. Second season just came out. It is fantastic. The Diplomat on Netflix. Go check it out. It's great. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Go check those out as well. 2 great local businesses that are owned by people in Nashville that have lived here for the vast majority of their lives and are providing service to the Nashville community. It's local, supporting local. Keep those dollars in the community. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, right up there in Madison off Briley. It's about 10 minutes from downtown, super accessible from all interstates. Really, really easy place to go grab lunch. And, of course, your Thanksgiving meal is taken care of. Just go order it. And Sinkers Beverages as well as Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville. That's 90 years of serving the Hendersonville and East Nashville communities. Liquor Stores of the Year. Make sure you go check them out as well. Sign up for good journalism, Tennessean.com, Nick. And can they follow you on Blue Sky yet? Have you signed up during the show?
I have not. I need an invite or something?
No, not anymore. It's wide open. It's wide open. The users have in 90 days have more than doubled. They had 6 million users 90 days ago. They now have over 15 million users. It is a nice place to interact and talk about stuff that we all care about and like without getting interrupted by the Nazi porn bar.
Brother, I am still not on Snapchat. I'm still not on Instagram. I'm a pretty slow adapter when
I'm not on Instagram.
I can tell you the only reason I have a Facebook account is because when I was like 15 years old, my sister wouldn't talk to me. She said it's Facebook time. So I went in the other room and made a Facebook account and said, will you talk to me if I have Facebook?
How's the relationship today?
Great. She's my sister and we talk all the time. Stop, Cat.
More ways to get its skin than you think. Just pointing that out. All right. Look, I am on Instagram. I do not get on Instagram. I have a Facebook account that has all fake information about me. It's none of it's real. But I'm telling you, it feels a lot like old Twitter. And I enjoyed old Twitter when we used to all watch college and pro football games together, monoculture events, and have time together in like basically a public chat room.
Say this: if you can invent an app that feels like 2012 to 2014 YouTube, I will be there. 2012 to 2014 Twitter, I can survive.
Without it, you mean?
Yeah, I can survive without it.
But you know what 2024 Twitter is like.
I do.
You're out there in the streets a little bit.
And I can show you how my usage time in the last 8 to 12 days has dipped significantly.
Mine's an 8 to 12 month decline. Blue sky up and to the right. Twitter down and to the right. All right. That does it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out. To all of you in the comment section, we do appreciate you. Yes, more cats from JT. JT probably needs to listen to the whole show. Just as a point of fact. There you go. There's a cat. My dog's around here somewhere. Old William Nelson. We'll see. Otherwise, enjoy the games over the weekend, SEC and Pro. Sign up for Good Journalism at the Tennessean, Sinkers Beverages, and follow me on YouTube. Follow me on Blue Sky at Braden Gall. Thanks for listening. For Nick, I'm Braden. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye, cat.